But regardless, even if you don't put your property in LLC, you should always do a trust. Lawsuits and estate planning is very important. So when we're talking about taxes and estate taxes and all exemptions and all that, putting in a trust allow you to do a lot of things to qualify for certain program. As you get older and you become incapable of taking care of your own stuff, the trust has a power to do a lot of things as long as you have the capacity to designate the trustees and the beneficiaries and all that.
Evergreen, I'm thinking about putting my car on Turo. Is there negative consequences if I don't have an LLC and just make money all year and report it at the end?
That's actually very common nowadays. Everybody trying to, take advantage of the side gig, whether it's using their car or using a third party, whether it's Turo. That's like another version of Airbnb, but just having to be using your car to rent out to clients. There's a couple of things. Operate that as a business. You don't need an LLC. You don't need an S corp. You can just operate that as a sole prop. I'm not sure if you want some stranger to go into your car and do whatever they do with it. I'm sure there are times when we rented cars before and we wanted to floor it because we wanted to see how good and fast it goes, right? That's my nice car that I bought thinking that's my baby, right? I shouldn't want to rent it to anybody else, but that's my feeling. If you want to share that, that's no problem at all. If you're able to generate revenue, take into account the depreciation, the wear and tear that it takes on your car, the fact that somebody's using your car, you don't know what they're doing because you can't really see what they're doing, and the revenue that you generate, because keep in mind, Turo will take a commission out of this. So I get it. There are some deductions that you can claim. Hard to claim too much on a car because you can say, hey, based on the car value, it depreciated this much based on the fact that I rented it out. I have to spend money on cleaning it or repairing it, fixing it. The problem is that you mix that car with personal use and business use. So you got to have a good track record of what is being used, when it's being used, and how those expenses relate to the time that it's being used as a rental versus the time that you're using it as a personal vehicle. So that's the tricky part.
How does it work for a nonprofit to be the owner of a profit LLC company?
You got to understand, a nonprofit, by definition, is not profit driven, right? We're not nonprofit based on whether it's a 501c3 or 501c2 or 4 or whatever, based on this classification. Its purpose is to serve the community for the benefit of the community. So if you mix anything that is business driven or revenue generated for your own benefit or for a profit, then you're basically going against the mission and goal of that nonprofit, and you might have your status revoked. So don't mix any business with nonprofit activity. The compliance requirement is quite high, especially when you're running a nonprofit. If you notice the 990 tax form, it asks everything about the nature of this business. What does it do? The 3 top projects that it provided or served for the community, who gets paid what vendor do you use, and are there any conflict of interest? Is there a program set up to create any type of whistleblowing or any type of compliance? I mean, it's just extensive in the way it asks questions. Once you run a nonprofit that's over $50,000 revenue a year, those tax forms will get more complicated. But if I were you, do not mix business with a nonprofit activity. Now, it doesn't mean a nonprofit cannot do business with a profit-driven business, right? I run a nonprofit, maybe I need a consultant to provide mental health counseling for my clients, and that person or that company who provide mental health support is a private company. There's nothing wrong with that, but there's an independence between what we run as a nonprofit versus the vendor that we use to provide support for our community. So there's 2 different things, but you can't mix your personal nonprofit organization with the business that you have as a profit entity.
Vang says, I'm not a tax person, but from my limited understanding, the LLC must be wholly owned by the nonprofit, and the LLC's activities are like of the parent nonprofit to be eligible for federal tax exempt status. State tax will differ.
Well, number one, corporations. Nonprofit has to be a corporation first and then get classified as a tax exempt status. So it has nothing to do with LLCs, and nonprofit cannot be owned by an LLC. People mixing business with personal again.
Tracy says, how do you file for LLC business with personal tax?
Well, it depends. If you have a single member LLC, for those who doesn't know, it's a limited liability company. It's a classification that's quite popular, mostly in California, for a business entity that allows you some level of what they call asset protection, meaning that if you own anything under your name as a sole prop, anything happens to that business, whether it's lawsuits or liability, obviously you're subject to that. You're subject to a lawsuit, you're liable for misdeeds or any issues or problem that comes with that. If you have an LLC, there's some level of protection. And again, I'm an IRS agent and financial advisor, but I'm not a tax attorney, and some of these stuff, you can consult the attorney for more in depth. But for the most part, people tend to do businesses, don't understand the difference between an LLC, an S corp, or a C corp. And so I would say do your research, give people like us a call. It's easy for me to talk to you in person or over the phone and try to understand your situation, the nature of the business that you want to start, the nature of your tax strategy or overall business strategy before we can say which one is better or whether you should do it or not. We do a ton of formations here, and having a partner who is a tax attorney makes a big difference too, because there's a support for us as well. And I coming from the tax planning strategy where we try to implement the strategy more for the LLCs and S corp than if you just have a sole prop where there's not much you can do as a sole prop. But there are situations where you don't need LLCs and S corp. Normally, the gist of it is if you're buying properties, I would recommend that you put those properties into an LLC. You have an active business and have employees and things like that and payroll, I would say S corp is a lot better. But there are some business where you're just a startup. You can always start as a sole prop, and nothing wrong with that. Our Grove charges $16 as a business license. You asked a question about drawback of having a title of your home by trust on LLC versus your personal name. Well, number one thing, and I tell all my clients, as somebody who have assets and accumulate certain level of wealth and have responsibility, I think all of us, right, have to have a trust. We're in America, right? We need to make sure we understand family law, tax law, trust law, and regulations, how titles works, how properties are taxed when, God forbid, you're not there and you go through the court with probate because the fact that you never had anything legal to hold title on your properties. And not just the fact that you have a trust to hold your property to help with estate planning, but it also gave you a chance to have written instructions how you want your asset to be distributed, who you want to take care of your kids, God forbid anything happens to you. Also, you don't want them to go through probate. So that's where you want to have your properties and asset into a trust. Now, the trust, most of the time in your lifetime, is probably going to be a revocable trust. So that means that you can change it later. And I don't want to cross the legal aspect of it because that's where the attorney comes in. So for me, I've been working on my trust for the last 3 years. It's complicated. It's also a cultural thing for me because I don't want to confront difficult decisions of having somebody take care of my kids and title and all that stuff. I'm just saying to you guys, you have a house, you have kids, get a trust going. I don't care how much and who's it by. Getting a trust done is one thing, but funding a trust is another. So it's two big steps, and we all got to do that for our family and our kids. As far as an LLC is concerned, when I think of LLC, I'm thinking about business structure. Owning my building that is under an LLC, it rents out to my business, it's under an LLC. God forbid anything happened to the rental, I'm protected because it doesn't get into my personal asset, it doesn't get into my trust. There are people who set up an LLC that owns the business property, and then they move the LLC under the trust, which is no problem at all. So it's like a little bit of a double protection. But overall, a lot of people put their regular homes and asset into a trust. People put their business property into an LLC. But yes, I also see a lot of people after they set up an LLC, they put the LLC under the trust, which is a very conceivable objective as well. So I see that work out for a lot of people. But regardless, even if you don't put your property in LLC, you should always do a trust. Lawsuits and estate planning is very important. So when you're talking about taxes and estate taxes and all exemptions and all that, putting in a trust allow you to do a lot of things to qualify for certain program. As you get older and you become incapable of taking care of your own stuff, the trust has a power to do a lot of things as long as you have the capacity to designate the trustees and the beneficiaries and all that. I hope that makes sense. But anything deeper than that, as far as the trust information, I would say seek the attorney.
I shared your website, TitoFinancial.com, on the group chat. If you guys want to get in contact with him and his team, this is his website right here. Just go over here to the resources, get involved, contact us, put your info out, reach out to him, and in the message just say that you heard about him from ChiaTalks. So that way he know that you came from here, and I'm sure him and his team will get to it. Again, just reach out to Tito or someone like Tito about your questions. I can't stress this enough. It is so important to have somebody like Tito on your team if you're really serious about your business. Or even as a sole proprietor, eventually you're going to want to move that from a sole proprietor into an S corp. You're going to realize and say, how come you didn't do it sooner once you find out all the benefits? And trust me, the benefits are going to cover so much more of the fees that you're going to be paying to hire someone like Tito. I guarantee it, okay? With that being said, I'm going to let you guys all go. Thank you again for tuning in, and we will see you guys next time. All right, Chi fans, peace out.